river itself and
The
measuring
river
the
is what's
depth.
happening between those two bridges, the 8th Avenue and the railroad. The whole area, like in 211 and 12.
Yeah, we've been collecting information since about 2001. That 1985 information is actually from historic FEMA mapping. We were able to get cross-section data. And then King County has a channel monitoring program that we run, and we actually send surveyors out, and we survey the channel bottom, not only on the White River, but several other rivers that have gravel accumulation problems.
Well, I guess I'm asking this is, do you know the date of the last time that stretch of river was evaluated? I know that all of a sudden you're not going for prevention and get worried. What was the actual that people went through there in 2011, September 3rd, or?
We did it probably in the summer of 2011, and then we have also a recent survey in 2012 that we didn't have compiled yet in terms of the information, but it's come up a little bit more. Excuse me?
That's quite a gap. Is that kind of normal?
Yeah, but we didn't have any recent flood events here in this last flood season, so the way that we approach our channel monitoring and these type of systems that accumulate gravel, the floodwaters can move sediment and make changes in that channel cross-section, and so we try to get that survey information after we've had the type of flood event that might have moved material or accumulated material to survey.
There is quite a gap there.
It's one.
I've been across there quite a bit, and I've noticed myself personally, oh boy, there's really a lot of.
We didn't survey. We did not survey the channel this summer. We did last summer.
The other question I have is, 209 when we had White River Station, the Army Corps of Engineers admitted that they let out too much water to the back. The other thing was, they also admitted in the news that they were worried about flood. So that kind of made me feel crappy. But the other thing is, the fire department came through and the police department came through. They did not do a darn thing. It used to be that when we had a volunteer fire department, they would blow a whipping. I don't knock on our neighbor's door.
In 2009,
Yes.
what happened was they released the amount that they had released in a previous event a few years before. They did not realize that the river channel had been filled up with that much sediment. Because it's not that the Corps does not go out and survey the rivers on a regular basis.
Well,
and again,
if they are using it as a backup river, if you have to Puyallup and the other river as your main tributaries that you're going to protect the people or downstream, then why aren't they taking care of this backup river?
the Puyallup, the Carbon, and the White all come off of different glaciers up above. They all have their own basins that are collecting water. And what happens is, if they stored more behind the dam and it overflows, then significantly more water would come down than what they're allowed to release. At that point, more damage would occur in the Pacific than what happened in 2000.
They didn't fill up Lake Taft either.
Yeah, what happened like that?
How much can that lose?
There was nothing out there.
Yeah, so the diversion dam is up by Buckley, where the fish trap is, and the Corps of Engineers doesn't have the authorization to control what goes into that flume.
So have they done anything since 2009?
So the size of the flume as it was built can carry about 2,000 cubic feet per second when there's no sediment in it. The other thing, if you go up there by SR 410 by the bridge and you take a look at the flume, you'll notice it's the old cedar plank type flume. It's not in the best of shape. And so the carrying capacity is only about 400 cubic feet per second, or else they could have the flume fail. So it's not much water that can get diverted in there. Cascade Water Alliance now owns all that as part of the Lake Taft's future water supply. So it's Cascade Water Alliance that actually owns that flume and the lake area. And so there's some limitations about how it could be used. It's not going to do much when we're talking about 10,000 or 11,000 cubic feet per second. 400 cubic feet per second up there. Boise Creek comes in below it, and 100-year flow on Boise Creek is about 1,200 CFS. So it really doesn't provide a flood control much of a benefit. Maybe some, but not much.
So, the Army Corps of Engineers, they're watching this 12 river, and it feels to me like they're more concerned. I can understand it's just the one dam, the White River, and they're more concerned about the amount of water they're going to put down there than the amount of water they're going to put in Marty River.
No, what happens is they have no control of how much water goes to the Puyallup or the Carbon River. Those are absolutely uncontrolled. Whatever falls in those basins goes through the river. So they try to regulate how much goes through the White River, because if it's already topping, why do you want to add more and just have it do even more damage? So they have to manage the White River to not create additional burden on the rivers when they're already at a strained level. Yes, sir.
Years ago, this water comes into Byway and like that, then discharged to the White River power plant, and that caused a lot of siltation to occur further down the river. Why is that no longer a viable option?
Yeah.
As I was mentioning, the flume can only carry so much water, and they regulate the lake level. I think there's only about multiple feet of lake level they can control to. And then the penstocks that release the water out of the lake are limited in size. Again, when those operations were done by P.C.S. Energy, for whatever reason, that's how they operated it. I'm not sure what Cascade Water Alliance has in their agreement with lake owners, or how they're constrained to operate the facility now that they own it.
So you're passing this the PSE's problem and the Cascade Water's problem, and you guys are just...
No, first off, Puget Sound Energy doesn't own...
It just sounds like Pacific has become a sacrificial lamb for the Corps of Engineers, like King County and whoever else is behind it. I'm sorry, that's just what I'm hearing.
Well, I think...
Are you telling us that flooding is going to happen? Put your trap on higher ground and get some leaders to discount it.
I'm telling you that we've got some temporary flood protection measures that we've got in place since 2009, and we have flood district funding to build 2 large-scale capital projects with permanent flood protection.
Well, that's perfect. In 10 years, when you guys finally get your paper together and somebody draws it up and people look at it and everybody gives a thumbs up, and then in 2042, you start, and then it's out of date.
Well,
Very frustrating sitting in this chair listening to your...
We were told back in 2009 that this was going to be completed in 2000.
Exactly, your KD dam pool has been...
And now you keep bumping it back, man. What's the life expectancy of that setback? In 10, 15 years, it's going to be obsolete, right?
no. We're actually planning, because we have this information about the sediment that comes down here, the way that we've approached the analysis is to plan for enough protection for a service life of the facility for 50-plus years.
And that's based
And
on what? That's based on the sediment coming down now?
We have the sediment trends that we analyze, and we're taking that into account when we also do our estimates of where the future water surface elevation will be. And then on top of that, we have an additional 3 feet of freeboard on top of the levee. So it's a very long service life for that. Both setback levees will be designed that way.
And when is this going to get started and finished?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, we have our permits that we've submitted for the county line project. We need those permit approvals before we can put the project out to bid. And then the target construction date is to begin in May 2015. It'll take...
Future budget?
Excuse me?
Is that based on the budget you have now? I mean, are they going to pull that back?
No, part of our flood control district funding, they have what's called a 6-year capital improvement plan. Both the county line project, which is slated to be almost $15 million to install, as well as the Right Bank Pacific Levee Setback project, which will probably be about another $15 $3 million are both included in that budget. They are. You know, we have a lot of support from Councilmember Keith-Von Reichbauer, from Councilmember Reagan Dunn. They both sit on the Board of Supervisors as well, and through our executive, Dow Constantine. They have recognized the importance of these projects and have provided funding for it, as well as funding going into these HESCO barriers right now. They approved $425,000 just about 3 weeks ago to direct me, my staff, to mobilize to build these facilities. So the city of Pacific is getting over $30 million of capital project improvement for flood protection in the next few years. That's a significant amount of the funding that comes from the district. And I do want to thank the Corps of Engineers, because part of the thing that they've donated are all these HESCO barriers, and they're expensive, and the Corps has donated them. They're on loan to the county to use for the next 5 or 6 years.
Here about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and they came out and helped the neighbors, White River, and they wanted something.
I was in here last night.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I've got a few questions. I'll send it to you and I'll spread it out. First one is, just about the basics for the Corps. One of the main issues due to lack of warning last time was that there wasn't enough warning in the gates, because some of the gates weren't working. There's 5 gates in that river. Are they all functional? And are they all certified to warn us when something is happening?
So the gauges on the White River are operated and maintained by the U.S. Geological Survey. There are partnerships to help fund some of that. Pierce County helps cooperatively fund some of the gauges, as does King County. During flood events, the USGS will send out field technicians to check on gauges if they seem to be not reading or something's malfunctioning. But it's up to the USGS to maintain them. When you go onto the website and you see that the gauge reading isn't there, it'll have an odd number like -901, and the gauge just isn't reading. And sometimes gauges get washed out. And on the White River, it's particularly hard to gauge it, again, because of all the sediment. One of the ways that you gauge a river is you have to have a very stable cross-section, so you can get that river reading and make those calculations. But if your river channel is moving around, your gauge data is poor quality. And so USGS actually rates their gauges, whether they're poor, fair, or good information. So they're the ones that watch it. And if we see there's a gauge out, there are phone numbers, like in our flood warning center, we're monitoring those same gauges, and we'll call USGS and say, you know, something's wrong with the R Street gauge. You better get somebody checking it. And that's how they do it. You know, I don't know how the USGS directs their field staff, you know, how often, but you know, they do go check and maintain them. They want them to be up and running through the season, and they do review all the data it collects. So they do attend to them.
But it seems that would be part of like a checkoff process in the flood season, that all entities are involved with flood management would be giving me an answer to say, gauges are up, sediment's been monitored, systems are in place, sandbags are filled.
We do. There's an annual interagency meeting that is held in King County. The National Weather Service comes, USGS comes, the counties, the city representatives, and as agency staff, every year we meet and get you know, what is the weather prediction? Are we all ready to go? We do those types of preparedness.
My second one,
I just wanted to add one thing to that as well. We do have the gauges, but since 2009, what we had happen there, we do have the White River spotters from the Corps of Engineers that are out there now that help supplement that data and provide more real-time data for the city of Pacific. So we're hoping we don't run into issues with gauges. We have that backup for the Corps spotters.
some of the places where we have pescaberries, there's pipes that actually go underneath them, but on the downstream side, there's a check valve, so that the water can continue to flow out when there's not an event, and then in an event, it won't back through. There's a large one down in White River Estates, it's about a 24-inch diameter. It's what we refer to as a duckbill check valve. It's a rubber check valve that closes tight. It'll close around sticks and stones and things like that also, so that the water is directed in one direction. In addition to that, there are pumps that are lined up, ready to go, so that if we need to bring pumps in, we can pump water from one side of the episode to the others. Now, they won't necessarily be put in place to sit out there all summer long, all winter long. We've had them in the past, and they're very expensive pumps. The city has not had to pay for those pumps in the past, and they won't be paying for them in the future, but if they're needed, pumps will be brought in so that the water can be pumped from one side of that barrier back into the river channel. Yes, sir.
For the Army Corps, the 2009 flood was also a perfect storm. We had heavy snow, we had heavy rain, we had a lot of melt off, we had broken instruments. We had people that we think were flooding. Full moon, we had and that all came together. And so my question is, and ladies are mentioned plan for stuff. How proactive is the Army Corps to get all this data, take a look at the weather, even the weather readers on TV, say, okay, you're going to have 2 of those coming super soon. Does the Army Corps then, rather than just wait for things to get really bad, maybe I'd rather see a small group of, say, as low as 5,000 right now, we're going to have 6,500. Bring that reservoir down so we can be able to plan it. Present yet, we don't have all that capacity. So are you proactive in looking at all that data that's available to you?
The regulators are very proactive and are watching the weather. One thing to keep in mind about Mud Mountain Dam is that it is a flood control dam only. There is no reservoir behind that dam until there's a storm event. They keep it empty throughout the year until there is an event. When the storm events come in, then they will put a pool behind it, but until then they keep it empty for flood control purposes.
For example, right now.
Yes. It is run of the river right now. They are not holding back any water. It is an empty reservoir, and the river is running. What comes in goes out.
I just want to add to that. I'm on the dam for 10 years. I've been here for 4 years, so I'm kind of learning everything pretty quickly. But I work in the public affairs office, so it's my job to help get some of the information out. I've worked very closely with these folks to help get you all the information that you need. But from what I've seen, the water managers are really aggressive on getting that water. They don't want to hold water back because of exactly what you're talking about. But they have a variety of sources that they're looking at for data. We've got a meteorologist that's on staff, and they're constantly making decisions based on data that's coming in based on their expertise. Their goal is not to hold any water. So, but I mean, obviously they will if it's something that they need to do, but they're not holding it just to hold it.
And 2009, there was we had no water, and 4 other estimated capacity of the river. We noticed capacity has decreased since then. What assurance do we have that we will be notified in advance? Have we been notified 4 or 5 hours ahead of the 2009
2009 was the water came back way. They came through the back door because as it was going down the river, it hit the 8th Street Bridge and then started backing up other channels, which I don't think they had estimated, they didn't know the capacity underneath the bridge. Again, a lot of this lost capacity is the sediment in the river. There was a previous event in 2006 or 5. 2000, well, but, you know, they had released 12,000 before and not having an issue. And so that's part of what happened was they figured, well, we've released 12,000 before without any problems, and they didn't know how much things had changed. Now they know, and they're more careful about how they're operating things because of that.